What is wildlife habitat? Lesson 4. Water. All wildlife species require water to survive. As a habitat component, we should think of water in two different ways. The first is water that is required for drinking or staying hydrated, and the second is water as the primary habitat medium within which a wildlife species spends its time and meets its needs. Water for drinking or hydration comes in two primary forms. The first is free water, which is water that is derived directly from an open water source, such as a stream, pond, puddles, and dew. You can think about free water as liquid water that you can see and touch. The second is preformed water, which is water that an animal derives from the food that it eats. Plenty of wildlife species readily drink water out of free water sources, such as streams and puddles. In most areas of the Northeast, we are humid enough that these water sources are usually readily available in most habitats, such that wildlife rarely need to travel far to find a source of free water. Our situation in the Northeast is very different than that in arid regions of the country, where sources of free water may be rare, and wildlife must move to find limited sources of free water. In fact, creating and maintaining water sources is a common method for improving habitat for wildlife such as mule deer, white-tailed deer, and elk in the arid western and southwestern U.S. Bats are a group of wildlife species that rely on open sources of water when they need to take a drink. Bats drink on the wing, meaning they drink by flying low over an open, still water source, such as a still pond, lake, or large puddle, and they open their mouth to scoop up a drink. To do this, bats need a relatively unobstructed swoop zone as they approach and leave the water source. Bats often use forest roads and trails as they travel between their daytime roosts in trees in the woods and to nighttime feeding sites over open fields and wetlands. Deep puddles along roads and trails may provide bats with a convenient source of drinking water. Many small mammals, including redback voles, white-footed mice, masked shrews, and star-nosed moles, have very high demands for water due to their high metabolism. So these species tend to occupy and be most abundant in moist and humid habitats such as wetland edges and areas of low topography where surface water is readily available or where the ground remains saturated. Small mammals often occupy habitats that have very dense woody and herbaceous vegetation within the shrub layer and ground cover layer. This dense vegetation not only provides them with food and with cover from predators, but the vegetation slows down the wind and helps keep the humidity high within this habitat. As a result, vegetation within these habitats is often absolutely drenched with dew each morning. And dew is often overlooked as an important source of water for small mammals, songbirds, and insects. Most wildlife species meet the majority of their daily water requirements via preformed water. This is the water that is contained within the food they eat. Vertebrate and invertebrate prey is predominantly water, so most predators meet the majority of their water needs through their food. Herbivores also get the majority of their water from the plants they eat. Herbaceous plants and leaves contain a large amount of water, especially young plants early in the growing season. But even in winter, deer meet the majority of their water requirements by eating the buds and twigs of woody plants. In addition to providing hydration, water is a habitat medium where certain wildlife meet some or all of their breeding, feeding, or cover requirements. Certain amphibians such as bullfrogs, green frogs, and mink frogs conduct all of their life activities within the water. They require wetlands that remain permanently inundated throughout the year, and they rarely are observed far from the water's edge. Other amphibians such as spotted salamanders, marbled salamanders, and wood frogs spend the majority of their year in the forest, but they require wetland habitats such as vernal pools for breeding. Wood frogs and marbled salamanders are unlikely to occur in a forest unless there is a vernal pool somewhere nearby. With the exception of box turtles that spend most of their time on land, all of the other turtles that occur in New England are unlikely to occur unless their required wetland habitat types occur within the local landscape. For example, there must be a stream or a river nearby if you expect to find a wood turtle. Most ducks, loons, grebes, herons, and osprey are all very closely associated with water, and they meet all or most of their habitat requirements within or very near water. Similarly, beavers, muskrats, river otters, mink, and water shrew would not be expected to occur on properties where wetland habitats are not nearby. And throughout most of New England, water is an especially important habitat for moose during the summer, where they can submerge their bodies to keep cool and eat aquatic vegetation.